Here's a detailed script for the first section based on your outline and storytelling instructions written in a bold, dramatic, and immersive narrative style. The palace gates have never felt colder. Christmas, a season that usually glimmers with warmth, laughter, and age-old tradition, had become a battlefield of secrecy, betrayal, and unspoken pain. This year, the festivity was shattered by a shocking decree. A senior royal, long considered untouchable, had been barred from attending the annual gathering. The announcement rippled through the halls like a silent thunderclap, leaving courtiers, staff, and family alike frozen in disbelief. This was no ordinary family squabble. The reason, whispered in hushed tones behind closed doors, was the sudden resurfacing of a cache of letters penned by Prince Philip himself, letters that promised to expose truths too volatile to be ignored, secrets that had long been buried beneath the palace's gilded veneer. The senior royal in question was a figure of quiet influence, a linchpin within the complex hierarchy of the monarchy. Their presence at every major event had been a guarantee of stability, a reminder of continuity. And yet, here they were, conspicuously absent, their exclusion leaving a gaping void in the tapestry of tradition. Christmas had always been a stage where loyalty and lineage intertwined, where family portraits were composed not just for remembrance, but for the world to see. But this year, the stage was set for a drama far darker, far more intimate than any the public had witnessed. Rumors of old grievances, slights, betrayals, and jealousies bubbled quietly beneath the surface, ready to erupt. Siblings who once appeared inseparable now exchanged cautious glances. Cousins whispered behind silken curtains, and in-laws measured their words as if the wrong syllable might ignite a spark. The letters themselves were shrouded in mystery. Their contents were hinted at but carefully guarded, a tantalizing mix of personal reflections, cryptic warnings, and accusations that could shatter reputations. Even the staff, who had long served with stoic discretion, spoke in anxious murmurs, their loyalty torn between duty and the shocking allure of what these words might reveal. Courtiers moved with a heightened awareness, every footstep echoing like a warning through the palace corridors. Tension hung in the air like a tangible force, pressing against the walls, the chandeliers, and the very hearts of those who called the palace home.Amidst the cold formality. The family itself was unmoored. Loyalty clashed with personal resentment. Duty fought against desire. Raw emotions simmered beneath each polished bow and forced smile. Every exchange carried weight, every glance suggested a secret conversation, and every smile concealed a subtle sting. The absence of one figure had thrown the equilibrium into chaos, and the resurfacing letters had become both the cause and the catalyst. They promised revelations that would not merely embarrass. They threatened to cut through the polished layers of royal life, exposing vulnerabilities and fractures that the monarchy had spent decades concealing. As whispers of the letters spread through the palace corridors, a silent anticipation gripped every corner. The family, the staff, the courtiers all were poised on the edge of revelation, holding their breath for the storm to break. What had been locked away in private reflections, private grievances, and intimate confessions was now poised to confront the world. And in that tense silence, the stage was set for a revelation that could unravel decades of carefully maintained royal decorum. Shaking the monarchy to its core, this section flows into the next by establishing suspense and foreshadowing the power of Philip's letters, setting the audience up for the dramatic revelations to come. If you like, I can continue with Section 2, The Letters That Shook the Throne, maintaining this cinematic and suspenseful style while building directly on the tension established here. Do you want me to continue with Section 2? For years, Prince Philip's words had been locked away, sealed in the quietest corners of his private study. A collection of letters considered sacred, personal, untouchable. But now, decades later, they had resurfaced, their contents more incendiary than anyone could have imagined. Each page was a revelation, a window into the man behind the public image, filled with reflections, critiques, and warnings so sharp that they could sever the strongest of bonds. They spoke of love strained by duty, of anger concealed beneath the polish of royal composure, and of secrets that the monarchy had prayed would never see the light of day. The letters carried hints of unspoken fears, a father's unease over loyalty within the family, and silent concerns about succession and influence that had been whispered in corridors long before anyone else could hear. Some lines were subtle, suggesting caution or disappointment, while others cut deep, scathing judgments that threatened to tarnish reputations and expose vulnerabilities long hidden from the public eye. For the senior royal at the heart of the storm, the revelation was devastating. To be confronted with the private musings of a patriarch, whose words could shape destinies and define legacies, was to face a reckoning that no one anticipated. Shock gave way to a swirl of emotions, betrayal, sorrow, and a simmering anger that had no outlet. The palace itself reacted as though a tremor had shaken its foundations. Courtiers whispered, eyes darting in fear of unseen consequences. The silence of denial hung heavy in the air, a thin veil over the anxiety and panic that rippled through every hallway. Staff, once accustomed to calm and routine, moved cautiously, aware that any misstep could escalate tensions further. The leadership scrambled to maintain control, deploying strategy and subtle influence to contain what threatened to become an uncontrollable blaze. The letters were not mere artifacts of memory, they were instruments of upheaval, catalysts for confrontation. They exposed cracks in the family's unity that had been festering quietly for years. Long-suppressed grievances between siblings and cousins found new life in Philip's candid observations. Old alliances were tested, and unspoken rivalries reignited, each revelation a spark against a powder keg of resentment. It was clear that the senior royal's absence from the Christmas gathering was no arbitrary punishment, it was a preemptive strike. A shield against the turbulence these words were certain to unleash. Yet even as the ban was enforced, tension mounted, the family's cohesion threatened by emotions that were at once personal, political, and profoundly human. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Every whisper, every cautious glance a testament to the fragile state of royal order. Philip's letters had become the fulcrum upon which the family's dynamics now teetered. Trust and loyalty were in question. Love and duty were tested in equal measure. And while the palace strove to maintain the semblance of tradition, it was impossible to ignore the truth. The arrival of these letters marked the beginning of a chain reaction. A single revelation had begun to unravel a tapestry of secrecy and obligation, leaving the senior royal at the center of a storm that was only just beginning. With the letters now in circulation, the senior royal's exclusion was only the first act of a drama that promised to grow more intense, more unforgiving, and more emotionally devastating. Each page hinted at deeper betrayals, each paragraph a potential detonator for heartbreak. And as the family braced itself, one question loomed larger than all others. What secrets lay within these pages that could ignite a chain reaction of feuds, confrontations, and a Christmas unlike any other the palace had ever seen? This script maintains tension, builds on the previous section, and seamlessly sets up the next stage of the story. The forbidden gathering and the family's confrontation with the letter's truths. If you want, I can continue with Section 3, Inside the Forbidden Gathering, keeping the same bold, suspenseful, and cinematic style. Inside the gilded halls of the royal residence, the atmosphere was electric with tension, a fragile blend of opulence and unease that set every heart on edge. The chandeliers sparkled as though oblivious to the storm beneath them, while laughter and polite conversation barely masked the undercurrent of suspicion that threaded through the gathering. Each smile carried the weight of restraint, each toast a careful dance to avoid igniting the simmering resentment that had long been brewing. The absence of the band's senior royal loomed over the room like a silent accusation, a shadow that none dared speak of directly yet dominated every interaction. Whispers of Philip's letters lingered in the air, charged with the promise of revelations that could fracture the family's carefully maintained image. The guests moved with calculated precision, every gesture and word measured, yet the tension was palpable, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath in anticipation of the inevitable clash. The key family members navigated the gathering with the poise expected of their station, but their expressions betrayed subtle cracks. Eyes darted to empty chairs, hands fidgeted with silverware, and behind each courteous nod lurked a questioning glance, a silent assessment of who might be aligned with whom. Old rivalries stirred, hidden grievances quietly resurfacing as strained conversations skirted the edges of confrontation. Every exchange was a high-stakes game, each word chosen with surgical care to maintain appearances while masking the roiling emotions beneath. In corners and alcoves, hushed whispers exchanged theories, speculations, and fears, while in the open, laughter rang hollow, echoing against the tension like a fragile veneer. Moments of vulnerability surfaced unexpectedly. A subtle quiver in a voice, a fleeting tear, a hand brushing against another in quiet comfort, all were glimpses into the human fragility behind the stately fades. These glimpses offered fleeting relief from the rigid protocol, but only deepened the sense that beneath the glitter and tradition, the family was fracturing under the weight of secrets too powerful to remain contained. Courtiers and staff moved like shadows through the gathering, mediators in a silent war, attempting to smooth over tensions, intercept whispered barbs, and preserve a semblance of harmony. Yet even their careful interventions could not entirely quell the undercurrent of anxiety. Every glance, every half-smile, every silent pause was loaded with meaning, foreshadowing the confrontation that had been quietly gathering force. The air was taut with anticipation, every subtle signal hinting at the fracture lines that would soon erupt into open conflict. The letters, the absence of the senior royal, and the swirling mix of resentment and loyalty had created a tinderbox, and all that remained was the spark to ignite it. The celebration, meant to embody joy and tradition, had become a crucible of emotion, a proving ground where allegiances would be tested and truths exposed. As the night unfolded, the opulent veneer of festivity began to crack. Subtle tensions sharpened, conversations faltered, and the first hints of confrontation emerged with a quiet but undeniable force. Every interaction became a prelude, every glance a warning, setting the stage for explosive revelations that would challenge the very foundation of family unity. The storm, long foreshadowed, was ready to descend, and no one present would remain untouched by its coming fury. This section flows directly from the letter's revelation, building suspense and tension while leading naturally into the next chapter, where secrets and betrayals will be confronted. I can continue with the next section, Secrets and Betrayals Revealed, keeping the same immersive, suspenseful, and cinematic narrative style. Do you want me to proceed? The letters didn't whisper, they struck. Each word, each carefully crafted line, revealed motives hidden for decades, clandestine meetings never spoken of, and betrayals that had festered beneath the polished surface of the monarchy. What had once been untouchable bonds between siblings and cousins now trembled under the weight of truth, as if every familial tie had been quietly eroded by unspoken grievances and veiled accusations. This Christmas, the palace discovered that nothing was sacred. Every revelation cut deeper than a ceremonial sword, striking at loyalties, reputations, and the carefully curated image of unity that had long defined the family. The contents of Philip's letters were explosive, chronicling moments of doubt, frustration, and disappointment that the world had never been meant to see. And yet now they were tearing through the corridors of power with merciless precision. Among the most shocking disclosures were hints at secret alliances and whispered schemes, revealing that certain members had maneuvered in shadows, their actions calculated to shift influence and protect ambitions. The senior royal, whose exclusion from the Christmas gathering had already cast a shadow, found themselves at the center of this storm, absorbing the full force of Philip's criticisms and warnings. The emotional fallout was immediate and brutal. Siblings exchanged glances heavy with judgment and disbelief. Children felt the tremors of a history they barely understood, and extended family members, some removed from day-to-day life at the palace, were suddenly thrust into a drama that felt both intimate and devastatingly public. Each revelation was a scalpel cutting away at the illusion of harmony, exposing a raw undercurrent of tension, envy, and resentment. Conflicts between duty and private sentiment emerged in stark relief. Public roles demanded composure and civility, yet privately, hearts were aflame with anger, humiliation, and fear. Courtiers moved cautiously, knowing that any misstep could exacerbate a volatile situation, while family members grappled with emotions that had been meticulously suppressed for years. Flashbacks hinted at events long buried, unspoken insults, quiet rivalries, and moments of perceived betrayal that now gained weight and clarity in the light of Philip's words. Silent rage simmered beneath the polite laughter. Whispered confrontations flickered like sparks in the corners of opulent rooms. And even those who had maintained a fade of detachment were drawn unwillingly into the emotional maelstrom. For the band's senior royal, the letters were both a wound and a weapon. Pain mingled with anger, and the exclusion from the gathering became a crucible for planning subtle retaliation. Every comment, every whispered criticism, every cautious glance at the gathering was processed with the precision of someone who understood the high stakes of legacy, loyalty, and revenge. Their perspective was one of isolation and strategy, a careful weighing of how to respond while the family's fragile equilibrium teetered dangerously on the edge. The palace itself seemed to react to the revelations, as if the walls absorbed the tension and returned it in whispers and half glances. The gathering, meant to celebrate tradition and continuity, had transformed into a stage of emotional combat. Every interaction was layered with suspicion, every word weighed against past offenses, and every silence pregnant with threat. In that charged environment, it was clear that the Christmas that had begun under the guise of festivity was now a battleground of hearts, legacies, and the raw truth of a family forced to confront its shadows. With secrets spilling into every corner of the palace, loyalties questioned and emotions raw, the family teetered on the brink of chaos. Every member knew that the confrontation was inevitable. The stage was set, the actors primed, and the coming reckoning promised to be both merciless and unforgettable, a dramatic crescendo that would leave scars far beyond the festive season. This script escalates the tension from the forbidden gathering and sets up the narrative for the next section, the silent power struggle, where alliances, influence, and emotional warfare take center stage. I can continue writing the next section in this same bold, cinematic style if you want. Do you want me to proceed? Beneath the glittering lights of the palace, a quiet but merciless battle for power was underway. The resurfacing of Philip's letters had upended the delicate equilibrium that had long governed the family, and in the shadows of opulent rooms, alliances shifted with every whispered comment and subtle glance. The senior royals, once bound by duty and tradition, now navigated a maze of suspicion and strategy. Every word, every gesture, every nod carried weight, and trust once assumed had become a rare and fragile commodity. The letters had not only revealed secrets, they had ignited a silent war, a struggle for influence that could redefine who held sway over the monarchy and who would be left in the shadows. Behind closed doors, strategic moves played out with careful precision. Conversations that appeared polite on the surface were laced with veiled threats, coded warnings, and unspoken challenges. Decisions were made quietly, calculated to preserve advantage while testing the loyalty of others. The band's senior royal, excluded from the festive gathering, was no mere victim. Their absence became a tool, a pivot around which the delicate chessboard of palace power now turned. Subtle manipulations unfolded with invisible finesse, as each family member weighed ambition against affection, desire against duty, and the past against a future reshaped by revelations. The emotional toll was particularly acute for younger family members, those who had grown up in the comfort of expectation and privilege, only to find themselves caught in the undertow of a conflict they could neither fully understand nor escape. Confusion, fear, and loyalty collided within them, and every decision, every alignment, carried consequences that could ripple across generations. Courtiers, long the silent facilitators of order, now found themselves active participants in a volatile drama. Their influence became both a shield and a weapon, guiding decisions, stoking rumors, and subtly testing allegiances, all while attempting to maintain a veneer of decorum. Every interaction hinted at deeper motives, every exchange carried subtext, and the band royal, though physically absent, exerted a presence that could not be ignored. Their pain, anger, and carefully plotted responses sent tremors through the palace, forcing even the most seasoned figures to question their strategies, their loyalties, and the stability of their influence. Philip's words, once private, had become a catalyst for confrontation, and each revelation threatened to unbalance the already fragile network of relationships that had held the monarchy together for generations. The stakes were immense. Power was no longer just a question of rank or ceremony, it was a matter of perception, of influence, and of who could control the narrative before it controlled them. Every subtle maneuver, every whispered suspicion, foreshadowed consequences that might extend far beyond the palace walls, shaping public perception, altering alliances, and potentially threatening the very foundation of the monarchy. As tension mounted and hidden agendas sharpened like blades, it became clear that the next encounter, the next gathering, would not simply be a holiday celebration. It would be a confrontation charged with emotion, strategy, and revelation, a Christmas remembered not for tradition, but for scandal. As tensions escalated, a confrontation seemed inevitable, a reckoning that would force the family to confront not only Philip's words but the hidden fissures within their own ranks, promising a Christmas gathering that would echo through history as a turning point in the monarchy itself. This section flows directly from the revelations and betrayals, setting the stage for the dramatic confrontation in the next chapter. I can continue writing Section 6, the confrontation that shook the family next, keeping the same intense, cinematic, and emotionally immersive style. Do you want me to proceed? Finally, the storm that had been brewing behind polished doors and whispered conversations erupted with merciless force. In a private meeting, tensions that had simmered for weeks boiled over, leaving no room for restraint. The band royal, fueled by a mixture of pain, anger, and defiance, launched into a dramatic defense, their voice sharp and unwavering, cutting through the pretense of decorum that had long masked family fractures. Every accusation, every rebuttal, seemed amplified, reverberating through the room with the weight of years of suppressed resentment. Philip's words, once locked away in private letters, now crashed against fragile alliances like waves against rock, shattering fades of civility that the monarchy had carefully cultivated for decades. Explosive arguments flared over the interpretation of Philip's intentions, the legacy of the patriarch's influence, and the decisions he had silently guided from behind the curtain. Voices rose, at first controlled, then jagged with emotion, as siblings confronted one another with unspoken grievances, jealousy, and bitterness that had been accumulating beneath layers of tradition and expectation. Every glance, every pause, every interjection revealed old wounds, subtle betrayals, and rivalries that had never truly been resolved. The raw emotion was undeniable. Love, duty, and loyalty collided in an unpredictable and painful chaos that left even the most seasoned family members momentarily unmoored. Courtiers, long accustomed to serving as the stabilizing force within the palace, scrambled desperately to maintain order, trying to mediate disputes that were as much emotional as they were strategic. Yet their interventions often fell short, drowned out by the intensity of confrontation and the deep-seated histories that now demanded acknowledgement. Silence fell in sudden, deafening waves, punctuated by tears, trembling hands, and moments of profound vulnerability that laid bare the humanity behind the royal veneer. In those moments, titles, protocol, and centuries of expectation mattered little. The family stood exposed, fragile, and unshielded from the consequences of their collective choices. Amid the chaos, subtle hints of another revelation emerged, like shadows at the edge of the room, threatening to deepen the fissures that had already begun to split the family apart. Even as emotions ran high, there were moments when eyes flicked to concealed letters, to folded papers that might contain truths yet more volatile than those already revealed. The meeting became a crucible where loyalties were tested, trust strained to its breaking point, and the line between reconciliation and irrevocable estrangement blurred. Every raised voice, every whispered accusation, hinted at consequences that would extend beyond the walls of the palace, threatening reputations, alliances, and the public perception of the monarchy itself. By the time the confrontation reached its tense conclusion, the room was charged with the lingering resonance of emotional upheaval. Hearts were racing, relationships strained, and the subtle equilibrium that had maintained family unity for generations lay fractured. Yet beneath the fatigue and raw vulnerability, there was an undeniable understanding. The drama was far from over. In the midst of tears, silence, and exhaustion, the palace had glimpsed the depth of its own fragility. And somewhere in the shadows, another secret waited, ready to surface, ready to ignite a public scandal, and ready to ensure that this Christmas would be remembered not for celebration, but for its devastating and unforgettable confrontation. As the dust settled from the confrontation, the palace was left reeling, fragile, and uncertain. Yet a new revelation lingered on the horizon, threatening to deepen the crisis and push the monarchy toward an entirely new and unprecedented storm of public scrutiny. This section builds directly from the previous tension of shifting alliances, leading seamlessly into the next stage, public fallout and media frenzy, where the consequences of this confrontation erupt beyond the palace walls. I can continue with that next section in the same dramatic, cinematic style. Do you want me to proceed? No secret stays buried forever. Within hours, the turmoil that had been confined to the palace corridors spilled into the streets, igniting a frenzy that no royal could contain. Headlines screamed with insinuations, speculation ran rampant, and the world watched as carefully guarded reputations teetered on the edge. Sensational stories painted vivid narratives of betrayal, exclusion, and confrontation, and social media erupted with viral debates that forced even the most discreet family members into an unplanned spotlight. The monarchy, long an emblem of stability and tradition, now faced scrutiny the likes of which it had rarely experienced, its meticulously curated image hanging by a single trembling thread. Each new report, each whispered rumor, amplified the emotional stakes inside the palace, where courtiers and advisors scrambled to gauge the damage and predict the next wave of public reaction. Public sentiment fractured almost immediately. Some expressed shock and outrage, condemning the family's internal conflicts as a betrayal of trust and tradition, while others voiced sympathy for the band royal, portraying them as a victim of political maneuvering and a patriarch's long-buried judgments. Disbelief mingled with curiosity as the letter's revelations, once private, were now dissected in newsrooms, talk shows, and online commentaries. Politicians and cultural commentators weighed in, speculating on the broader implications of family discord, questioning whether such personal scandals could influence public perception of the monarchy, its role in governance, and the very legacy of leadership. In every corner of society, the debate intensified, reflecting not only fascination with the royal family, but also the deep unease that comes when private betrayals become public spectacle. The palace itself responded cautiously, issuing statements that were measured, cryptic, or entirely absent, each choice scrutinized for hidden meaning. Silence became both shield and signal, a delicate tool for damage control, yet a source of further speculation. Analysts dissected the timing, tone, and omissions in official communications, amplifying the tension. Philip's letters, once private reflections, had become a prism through which every family interaction was now interpreted, every gesture re-examined, and every public appearance loaded with new significance. The band royal, previously confined to internal debates and whispered consultations, emerged into the public sphere, shaping a narrative of resilience, defiance, and strategic poise. Their voice, once silent, now carried the potential for both vindication and further controversy. The media storm brought the private family struggle into sharp relief, forcing a reckoning with the consequences of secrecy, loyalty, and emotional betrayal. Each revelation triggered cascading reactions, creating a feedback loop in which public perception, political speculation, and internal family tensions fed on one another. The letters were no longer merely historical artifacts. They had become instruments capable of redefining the monarchy, rewriting legacies, and challenging assumptions about unity, control, and authority. Every headline, every viral thread, and every televised discussion reminded the family that the world was watching, judging, and anticipating their next move. As the world watched and judged, the palace confronted a chilling reality. The crisis was far from over. The surface turmoil, explosive and public, hinted at deeper fractures and even more guarded secrets waiting to surface. The monarchy, despite its traditions, could no longer rely solely on discretion and distance. What had begun as a private family scandal was evolving into a defining moment, a crucible in which public perception, private loyalty, and the weight of history collided, setting the stage for revelations that would reach far beyond the palace walls and linger in collective memory for years to come. This section seamlessly continues from the confrontation and sets up the final reflective and tension-filled chapter about the lasting impact on the family. I can continue next with a family forever changed, maintaining this cinematic, suspenseful, and emotionally immersive tone. Do you want me to proceed? Christmas would never be the same again. The palace, a monument to centuries of tradition and ceremonial unity, now bore the visible and invisible scars of a confrontation that had stripped away layers of decorum and secrecy. The fallout from Philip's letters lingered like a shadow over every corridor, every drawing room, and every interaction. Each family member carried the weight of revelation differently. Some wrestled with guilt, others with betrayal, and still others with a newfound determination to assert their place within a family suddenly fractured. Loyalties had shifted quietly but irreversibly. Alliances that once seemed unshakable had been tested, and the absence of a senior royal at the Christmas celebration served as both a symbol of punishment and a pivot for future recalibrations of power. The emotional landscape was complex and raw. For those directly implicated by the letters, reflection brought not comfort but an acute awareness of the human cost of secrecy, ambition, and obedience. Generational divides widened as younger members, witnessing the raw vulnerability of their elders, began to question the expectations and burdens imposed by tradition. Conversations that once centered on surface-level courtesy and ceremonial duties now danced around unspoken truths and carefully measured admissions of fault. Even as the palace staff resumed their roles, the undercurrent of tension remained, a persistent reminder that the personal and political were now irrevocably intertwined. Tradition itself was challenged. Long-standing rituals, once unquestioned and sacred, now felt hollow against the backdrop of raw emotion and exposed secrets. The Christmas gathering, meant to symbolize continuity and familial cohesion, had instead become a stark reflection of human fragility and the moral complexities that underpinned royal life. Courtiers, historians, and chroniclers would later reflect that this Christmas would be remembered not for festive joy, but for the quiet courage it took to confront truths long denied, and for the resilience required to endure the emotional upheaval. Every gesture, every measured smile, every silent moment of reflection now carried layers of meaning that history would not easily forget. Rumors of further letters and concealed correspondences began to circulate, whispers of documents still hidden, waiting to challenge assumptions and test loyalties once more. The possibility of additional revelations loomed large, ensuring that the family's reconciliation, if it could even be called that, remained tentative. Even in moments of tentative calm, the sense that deeper secrets were yet to surface hung like a specter over the palace, foreshadowing a continuation of intrigue and emotional confrontation that would extend far beyond a single season. As the palace doors closed on this tumultuous Christmas, the air remained heavy with reflection and anticipation. The story of betrayal, courage, and hidden truths continued, each moment a reminder of the fragile balance between duty and desire, tradition and personal truth. The monarchy, while resilient, had been irrevocably altered, and the echoes of Philip's letters promised that the family's most dramatic chapter might still be unfolding, with consequences that could reverberate for generations. This section provides a reflective, suspenseful closure while leaving the narrative open for further revelations and drama, completing the arc of the Christmas crisis. If you want, I can also craft the optional sequel teaser section with the final cliffhanger to maximize suspense and viral engagement. Do you want me to do that? Just when the family believed the storm had finally subsided, the silence was shattered by the discovery of yet another letter one, whose very existence had been long denied. A missive that promised to upend everything the family had fought to contain. The words it contained were rumored to be more damning, more revealing than anything previously unearthed, hinting at hidden alliances, covert decisions, and truths that could reshape the very foundation of the monarchy. The palace, already strained by weeks of scandal and confrontation, now braced for a new wave of turmoil. Anxiety and anticipation coiled like a serpent through the halls, as every member of the family grappled with the possibility that the narrative they had thought under control was far from finished. This letter, more than any before it, carried the weight of potential devastation, a catalyst capable of rewriting history, loyalty, and the public's perception of royal authority. Fear and speculation rippled through the family. Some feared the revelation would expose their vulnerabilities, others worried it would shift the balance of power irrevocably. Strategists, both within the family and among courtiers, debated in hushed tones the best approach to mitigate damage, protect legacies, and control the story. The band senior royal, already navigating a turbulent path between exclusion and influence, felt the emotional tide rise anew. Hope, revenge, and cautious calculation mixed within them, each emotion a potential tool or weapon in the unfolding drama. The weight of centuries of expectation pressed down as every decision could carry consequences far beyond the palace walls, influencing public opinion, political alliances, and the monarchy's carefully guarded image. Outside the palace, the potential implications were enormous. The world was watching, and speculation ran rampant. Social media churned with rumors, news outlets dissected every historical precedent, and the press demanded answers the family was reluctant, or perhaps unprepared to provide. Each leaked hint added fuel to the fire, challenging the monarchy's image of stability, dignity, and continuity. The stakes had never been higher, and even those most confident in their ability to navigate public scrutiny recognized the fragile line between authority and chaos. Yet even amid fear and uncertainty, the emergence of this final letter signaled a potential turning point. Preparations began quietly within the palace for a new era of transparency and scrutiny, a recognition that concealment could no longer serve as the family's shield. Strategies were revised, alliances reconsidered, and the emotional toll on all involved, particularly the band royal, grew heavier, as they confronted both the chance for vindication and the risk of further marginalization. Every decision now required precision, every word measured, and every emotion harnessed to influence outcomes in a landscape reshaped by secrets. As the next revelation loomed, the monarchy stood at a crossroads, where every choice, every secret, and every emotion held the power to redefine history. The story of loyalty, betrayal, courage, and hidden truths was far from complete, and as the palace braced, the world waited with bated breath. The question lingered: had the full truth finally emerged, or was this only the beginning of a drama that would continue to haunt the corridors of power for generations to come, reshaping the very legacy of the monarchy itself? This final section delivers the cliffhanger and suspense necessary to tease the next chapter while maintaining continuity from the previous emotional and political escalations. If you want, I can compile all 9 sections into a continuous, full-length cinematic documentary script, ensuring seamless flow, pacing, and dramatic tension throughout. Do you want me to do that?